95% of them don't even need to be there anymore. So it's always a good reminder to me.
All right, everybody, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to our presentation. We're going to talk to you about Backdrop CMS.
How many of you have heard of Backdrop before today? Almost everyone, or half the people also. So Backdrop is a fork of the Drupal project. It's actually a fork of really early Drupal 8 before it started changing too much. It's specifically intended for small to medium-sized businesses and nonprofits, the kind of ventures that might not be able to afford upgrade from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. We're hoping that Backdrop will be another tool in the tool belt of development shops that do general website development for people. So I'm sure you've all heard of Squarespace and WordPress. They're kind of down at the lower end of the market. Squarespace gives you a really quick, easy, like click it together yourself website that doesn't do much. WordPress is a little bit more complicated, gives you a lot more power. You can host it yourself. Drupal, as you're probably all very familiar with, lets you do anything you can possibly imagine. And with Drupal getting more sophisticated and more complicated, we're seeing a little bit of a gap open up between the overlap between what you can do in WordPress and what you can do with Drupal. And we're hoping that Backdrop will start to fill that gap. Backdrop starts right where Drupal 7 left off, and we can talk a little bit about the features and do a demo later so you can see it in action. Nate and I are the co-founders of the Backdrop CMS project. I'm the project lead, which means I'm in charge of people. Nate's the technical lead, which means he's in charge of code. And we've come a long way in the last 2 years. Most important takeaway from Nate and I is that we both love Drupal. Drupal is something that changed my life. It's helped my clients. I have contributed countless hours to the Drupal community and the Drupal project, and I'm here working on Backdrop because Drupal is something I loved, and I wanted to maintain what I loved about Drupal into the future.
Yeah, both Jen and I have been active in Drupal core development and contrib development for quite some time. Both of us played rather substantial roles in the Drupal 8 development as well. I was a primary driver for the CK editor module in Drupal 8, and Jen was the initiative lead for Twig. So we have put in our efforts into Drupal 8 up until the point that we saw the amount of change and the impact that it was going to have on our customers and our client bases, and what it's going to do to our personal level of efforts that we're going to be on the hook for. And we decided about halfway through the Drupal 8 cycle that we needed to do something else.
So we've been working on Drupal for a really long time. We also spend a bunch of time teaching people how to use Drupal. So one of the things for me personally is I really liked Drupal and wanted to share that with the world. And when you try and show something you love to someone who doesn't know it the way you know it, you kind of experience it again for the first time. And one of the things that I noticed in that process is that most people I'm teaching Drupal to were not developers. They were just people that had a Drupal website. And so we're trying to take this Backdrop software and make it software for people as opposed to software for developers, which I think is where Drupal 8 is going. Backdrop is not just managed by the two of us, though we're the ones you see here today. We've established an entire committee of people who are making decisions about the future of the Backdrop project.
This approach to management is modeled after the Apache project. The Apache project uses this model called the Project Management Committee as an alternative to what many in the open source world affectionately refer to BDFLs, or Benevolent Dictators for Life. Which includes Dries is the head of the Drupal project, or Linus Torvalds is the head of the Linux kernel. Many open source projects are run by PDFLs, and many are run by project management committees. So we've diverged a little bit in the way that we want to manage the project and make it so that it's slightly more democratic and kind of
representative.
Yeah, representative group of managing. So these are current project management committee members. Jen and I are on it, but we also have various people from various different backgrounds, and we're hoping to try to adequately reflect the membership of our community in our committee that is responsible for management. Yeah.
So we've got different constituents represented, and it's really important that we have people on our management structure that are not developers. This is something that I think is a bit of a problem in a lot of open source communities, where the people are making decisions for the project are thinking about it from a developer or coding point of view, and not necessarily a human impact point of view. And so we've got people on here who are business owners who are representing what does it look like to sell this product. We've got end users, what does it look like to use this product? What does it feel like? We've got people on the front end as well as people on the back end, and people who are really familiar with our APIs. So we're trying to make sure that this is a constituency of all of the people in the community. And right now that represents what they do. We're also hoping that'll expand to include where people live around the world. If this takes off in Latin America, we're going to want to have more representation from Latin America. Anything that we think, different languages, different genders, and whatever kind of diversity we have in our community, we want to have that same diversity in our leadership team.
So the PMC is responsible for a number of things, handling conflict resolution, setting the overall direction, making sure that the direction of the project aligns with the philosophy, and is responsible for the overall philosophy and direction of the project itself. So one thing that's interesting about this model of management is that rather than it being like a leadership that could take on kind of arbitrary decision making, because it's basically up to one individual to make all of their decisions. It's just like however they feel, that's the way the project may be guided.
You mean for BDFO?
In opposition to that, or in comparison to that, using a PMC model means that everybody kind of needs to have the same idea of what the project is trying to accomplish. And so in doing the PMC model, you have to have a defined philosophy for your project, for the project to actually be, for the PMC to actually weigh their decisions against it, because the PMC isn't bringing in their own personal opinions. I mean, they are, but when it comes to making a decision, they shouldn't be weighing their personal needs. They should be weighing it against the project philosophy. Like, does this question or does this solution benefit the needs of the project as they're defined? And if it doesn't, then, but it's a good decision anyway, you need to change what the definition of what your project is. And Drupal is very, very loosely defined in that it's like, the marketing is all over the place. If you hear from people at Aqua, you're going to hear that it's enterprise. But if you hear from the Drupal Association, they're going to say it's for everybody, right? And everybody gets to have their own message because Drupal's audience is undefined, which is kind of a problem because, well, I'm getting into too much about Drupal. But anyway, let's talk about the backdrop principles in which we're trying to like narrow down the focus of what our product is trying to accomplish. The first one here is backwards compatibility is important. And this is a big, well,
Formerly, it was a huge difference from Drupal's philosophy, because Drupal, until last week, said that we don't care about backwards compatibility. We're always going to do latest and greatest, and that's all it'll be. And then starting this past week, an announcement came out that was like, actually, we're going to introduce a backwards compatibility policy. So it's like, well, now it's not that different. The big thing for Backdrop, though, is thinking about how every change we make affects the community. So is that a change that's going to ripple down to contributed module maintainers? Is it a change that's going to ripple down to people who are actually running and supporting these sites? And if it is, how can we mitigate that impact? So if we can write a backwards compatibility layer, or add wrapper functions, or make the upgrade process smoother, we're going to work on fixing that. We originally looked at trying to have complete API compatibility like a tool like WordPress. But if you look at what WordPress's API is, it's like laughably small. There's like 12 functions. And if you compare that to Drupal, where there's thousands of them, there's just no way. And so Backdrop even being in the middle, we can't commit to 100% backwards compatibility, but we can say backwards compatibility is important. So every decision that our software makes about changes in the future needs to carefully weigh, how does this affect people who are running software today and people are trying to upgrade in the future? The next one is saying that we're going to write code for the majority. This is writing code for the majority of people, not necessarily writing the code for the majority of developers. And that means that when you open a file, it should be clean and easy to understand top to bottom. We're not going to be using modern code standards just for the sake of having it be the same everywhere. We're only going to use it where it makes the most sense for the code that we're writing. So we do have more object-oriented code than Drupal 7, but we have not rewritten all of the software to be object-oriented. just because we want it to be consistent. It's more important that anyone can open the file, read it, possibly identify a problem, fix it, possibly add a new solution. You don't need to have a higher degree in order to work in this.
Maybe accessible code and like really almost like beginner friendly code even are priorities for us.
And next thing is kind of along those same lines. We want to include features that apply to the majority of people or the majority of websites that are running this software. So that includes looking at the list of top modules for Drupal now, but Backrub in the future, and making sure that the ones that are most important are always included in core, and removing things that are only going to benefit the extreme minority of sites running. So we've already dropped support for running it on any database system that's not MySQL or MariaDB or anything comparable like that, because there was less than 1% of Drupal sites that ever ran on that. So why are we supporting that kind of functionality in core? So trying to make sure that our code is leaner and meaner and serves the most important things of highest priority, and those edge cases, they can be solved in contrib or some other way, but not something that belongs in core.
Or some other product, really.
Right.
I mean, we have no problem with that.
And also, Drupal's great, but Drupal would be nothing without its amazing suite of modules. That API is something that we need to retain if we want to stay relevant in the future. And it's also really important to us that anyone who does need to achieve those things that aren't in the majority of features that are included can do it through contrib. So making sure that we have a strong, robust contrib community via Backrubs API is really important. Meeting low system requirements. This is so that you can run Backrub on shared hosting or super affordable hosting. I have a couple of Backrub sites that are on a $10 a year hosting plan, which is fantastic. And that, again, it talks to that lower part of the market. Not everybody can afford a Pantheon or an Acquia, and making sure that you can put Backrub wherever you need to is going to be important. And planning and scheduling releases. This is something that when we started doing it, Drupal hadn't yet, but Drupal has also got scheduled releases now too. With Backrub, we have a new release every 4 months on the 15th, January 15th, May 15th, September 15th, and we're sticking to that. And that makes it so that people who are running Backrub sites can schedule, oh, I'm going to need some development time, or contributors can say, I'm going to take a week out of my work around then so I can work on it. It just makes it much easier companies to budget, people to manage time if you have a schedule and stick to it. And the last one, obviously we're here because Drupal is open source, so we couldn't have worked it if it wasn't. That's something that's really important to us, but also keeping it free, making sure the software can be accessible to everyone so anyone can have a tool of this power is really important to us as well.
Yeah, and all of these items, we have it written down very clearly at backrubcms.org/philosophy with a much more verbose description of all of these points and why we have these and what each of them stands for. Besides the philosophy, another guiding document that we use is our mission statement. The mission of Backrub is defined as Backrub CMS enables people to build highly customized websites affordably through collaboration and open source software. And we've highlighted the word affordably because that is one of the key reasons why you would use any software, is to make it so that your costs will come down or you will save time. And so saving time is saving money. And so affordability is all about saving people time by giving them products that actually accomplish that.
I also like to draw attention to the fact that we use the word people.
As opposed to like developers or
yeah, I mean, Backrub is
or,
there to enable people to do things, like regardless of whatever else it does, it's for people. Right,
and it's not a system that exists for being a system, it's a system that exists for people to use. Yeah. So a lot of this creates some introspection around like, well, how do you accomplish that? How do you make web development more affordable? Some items here: increase the out-of-box functionality. There's tons of things in Drupal 7 and even in Drupal 8 that you still need to download every single time you download a module or download the core product. You also need to install like some basic contrib modules like Path Auto, for example. Like that should just be there. Making development easier and faster. We like to think that if the learning curve is lower, that will make it so that you have less specialized developers. That makes it so that they can learn things easier, they can be productive faster, and that makes your website cost go down because there's less time learning and more time doing. Making maintenance easier and faster. Part of this is always providing an upgrade path. actually, I feel like that might be, yeah, okay, that's a next time. Always providing upgrade path, making it so that maintenance, we have the ability to do things like install a module from within the user interface. So rather than like toggling back and forth between command line, also command line, I would consider it to be specialized knowledge as opposed to a user interface where it's like user interfaces, make it so that people can do things from one user interface rather than needing to toggle back and forth. Making upgrades easier and faster is super key. Backdrop has a full upgrade path from Drupal 7 that is much more comprehensive than the existing migration path from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. We include upgrades for everything, like everything that's in core versus everything that was in core for Drupal 7 or in contrib that we've moved in, including path auto, views,
Redirect.
content types, redirects, tokens,
transliteration.
Yeah, transliteration. All of the modules that exist in contrib that are now a part of core, or all of the core modules in Drupal 7. Backdrop maintains the same upgrade path like mentality of like Drupal and all of its previous versions that you start with a fresh install of Backdrop, point it at your Drupal 7 database, run update.php, and it runs the update. So Backdrop acts as though it's the next version of Drupal. And more ideas that we haven't yet thought of. We're always looking for ways to bring down cost or ways to figure out how can we save people more time.
We did start with Drupal, and Drupal already has this problem of tricking people into thinking it's free and then finding out later it's expensive. So that is something, as being in our mission statement, we're always going to be working. What is the biggest pain point in terms of long-term website ownership, and how do we bring those costs down? And one of the things that development, maintenance, and upgrades are all made easier by decreasing the complexity, making things simpler. And that's something that we've worked a lot on in Backdrop 1. Of course, keeping backwards compatibility important. And we're going to be continuing to work on that going forward, just trying to make it easier to understand, faster to debug, faster to maintain, faster to upgrade. All of that stuff kind of goes together. So most importantly, thinking about every time we make a change, how is that going to affect everyone who's got to support this platform?
So Backdrop's been out with this presentation. It's called 2 years of Backdrop. And it's like Backdrop has been ready for a long time for production use. And so if you're interested in trying out Backdrop on your sites today, absolutely, like go and give that thing a shot. We've had 7 releases since January 15th, 2015.
7 on-time releases.
Yeah, every release is always on time because it's released based on date, not based on functionality. And so if something isn't, Backdrop is always release ready all the time. Like you can always check out the latest dev and it should be production ready all the time. And the idea is that if a feature doesn't get in at that date, doesn't matter, it just gets into the next release. We cut the release anyway, and that's the version of Backdrop that we have. And this happens all the time, actually, because developers get really excited towards the end of the release cycle, right? So there's this huge swell of activity, like in the month before release.
Maybe I can get in.
And then there's like all of this crazy stuff that happens, and then almost always like one of the crazy features gets in, and then all the other ones get pushed to the next release. But then they're all in the next release, and so it's actually a great way of encouraging a constant flow of development, even though the giant swell of development we get right before every release rarely results in a new feature in that release. It always is just like finishing up the previous one. Okay, maybe not rarely, but it does happen.
But it also happens 3 times a year. So there's like new features all the time. So it also kind of keeps all of our core contributors super eager, where it's like, oh, if you don't get it now, it's only 4 months away, rather than being like, well, who knows until when we get it in.
Yeah, so the next release is coming up May 15th, Backdrop 1.7. The world of contrib is also looking really pretty healthy in the world of Backdrop. We have this chart here. How many top modules is this?
It's like 45 or something. Every time I try and update the site, I try and put more stuff in this list, but we're running out of room on the screen. So I started with the top modules in Drupal 7 and worked down, because that's usually people coming from 7 they're interested in. Everything here with a blue checkbox is either that module has been moved into core for Backdrop, or we have a comparable feature. So like we don't have a panels module in core, we have another module called layouts, but it does the same thing. Same thing here for like WYSIWYG, we have CK editor integrated directly in core, just like Drupal 8 does. So we don't need WYSIWYG module, it's marked as in core. We have a ton of stuff in contrib too. A lot of our top contrib modules are getting worked on. There's obviously more than are in this list. But you can see like the kind of ratio of what of this list is in core versus in contrib and backdrop. Most of those checkboxes is blue because we figured top Drupal modules should have, those are high priority to be in core for backdrop. And of the top 45, we only have two modules on that list that haven't been started yet. I don't even know what localization update is. Is that for updating from one version to another?
It automatically downloads translation files as you install new modules or update.
So it's not Drupal update related. But anyway, that's pretty good. And it says here we don't have field collection, but we do have multi-field, so it's questionably similar.
In contrib.
In contrib. Yeah, so we've got, there's a ton of activity going on. It's really fun to port Drupal modules to Backdrop too, because the amount of change is super minimal. So if you're like worried about what does that look like, it's like, oh, you change the info file and then you convert from variables to config and you're done. And it's like, woohoo, I could do 3 of those. Oh, well, depending on the modules.
It is always good for us to note that although backwards compatibility is a key tenet of Backdrop, you can't just run a Drupal 7 module on Backdrop. It takes in the vicinity of like 20 to 30 minutes for a typical module to port it from Drupal 7 to Backdrop.
Depends on the module. There's a couple modules you can just change the info file because we do have this backwards compatibility.
Yeah, average. That's what I'm saying.
You said you couldn't run one on a Drupal module. You can kind of run them, but they work the same way they did in Drupal 7, where your variables are saved in the database instead of to the configuration system. And if you want Backdrop, you probably want configuration management. And so in order to leverage that, those variables have to come out of the database and go into config. So that's the biggest transition point there.
Totals, here we have 362 total projects, including modules, themes, and layouts. And we'll talk about layouts in a bit. And 282 that actually have official releases. So when you make an official release, it creates a node on backdropcms.org and makes it show up in project module, very similar to Drupal.org, only all of our project management is on GitHub, but all of the downloads and the updates are still all fed through backdropcms.org. So it's like this hybrid where we don't have any project management on backdropcms.org, but we still have all of the projects. So there's a browsing capability and updating capability on the website.
Searching for things on GitHub's hard.
But the actual development is all GitHub based. And in the world of the community, we've had over 9,000 downloads of Backdrop since we started keeping track. 500.
No, that's total because it's GitHub number.
Oh, okay. 514 members on backdropcms.org, which is nice or surprising because you can't actually do anything on the website other than make a case study right now.
You can list your organization as seeking Backdrop work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you're a Drupal developer, you are also a Backdrop developer. It's just a fact, basically. And so if you're interested in, soliciting Backdrop work, make a profile and
you can say I'm available for hire, and then you show up on our contractors listing.
We've had around 80 people, over 80 people be contributors to core itself, and 62 people that have ported contributed modules.
So it's interesting, these numbers are if you compare them to the Drupal community, they look really tiny. But if you compare them to any other open source community, it actually looks pretty good. So it's hard coming from Drupal. You're like, oh, we're not quite. And then you look at something else and GitHub's like, you're the fastest growing. And we're like, what? It's just our numbers are a little askew. But I'm really proud of being 2 years old and having as many contributors as we do already. It's great.
You can come and join Backdrop developers in a number of ways. We do our development on GitHub, github.com/backdrop. We have a separate issue queue from the core repository for permissions reasons. But you can reach us on chat. We use Gitter as the primary real-time communications mechanism on Twitter, and of course the website backdropcms.org. Let's go through a little demo here and show you guys actually what Backdrop CMS is capable of doing. So this is a Backdrop site out of the box with one caveat that I installed devel generate and then generated some content. So other than that, this is a out of the box Backdrop website. And there's some key functionality here that follows into our principle of including features for the majority. Things like I know even in Drupal 8, the very first thing I see everybody do is they download, I think it's called, what's it called, toolbar, admin toolbar module, which makes it so that your toolbar has drop downs in it, right? It's just like in the world of Drupal 7, 60% of all Drupal 7 sites installed admin bar. Isn't an admin menu? Isn't that just crazy? It's like 60% of sites, and it's like, that's just mind-boggling. So why not just put it in core, right? And so that's what we've done. We yanked that toolbar module, put an admin menu. We did increase it in some ways, like only the latest versions actually have things like the search box, for example, to let you find things within the administrative menu. And also we made it responsive and touch-friendly. So you can use this on like a mobile device or a touch device, and it'll work just fine. Speaking of responsive, everything is responsive. You'll also see that we have a hamburger style menu. This is only in the latest release, that we have a mobile friendly hamburger menu. And not only hamburger menu, like this is a proper like drop down menus. How many times have you had a hierarchical structure on a Drupal 7 site or a Drupal 8 site, and you put in all the links, and it's like, where's the rest of the links? You put them in a hierarchy. Why can't I see the rest of the links? Or if you, so help you, you do see all of the links. They look like crap because they're all like, you know, in a nested list structure without any kind of drop-down mechanism. So you just end up with this link barf at the top of your page. In the world of Backdrop, we included a library called Smart Menus. So
which is responsive, touch-friendly, accessible. It's what Bootstrap uses natively, so it's got a lot of support, and it seems to be kind of like the winner in terms of responsive drop-down menus. Right? Let's just take the one that the rest of the world has decided is good, and put that in core and ship it so that it's enabled by default on every Backdrop site.
Yeah. So just some things that make things like directly out of the box a little bit more expected. We also, your first post actually is, we include one post and one page out of the box, a la WordPress. And in terms of content types, oops, that wasn't where I wanted to go. Well, I'll just mention this now. This is the, oh, gosh, I forgot to even mention. We have a new theme, right? And we have a new front-end theme. This theme is called Basis. Yeah, it's not Garland, it's not Bartik. Yeah, so we have our own custom front-end theme, and we also have a new back-end theme.
Well, it's 7, but we updated it.
Oh yeah, but it's new just because it has the same name. And some things like we also made things like our tabs are mobile friendly. And this interface, of course, we have views in core just like Drupal 8 does, and we've written an upgrade path, so you can point Backdrop at a Drupal 7 site and it'll upgrade all your views, content types, fields, no problem.
They're in the database.
Yeah, as long as they're in the database. So let's see. What I was going to do, though, is I was going to go over to the content types and show you guys the out of the box. Again, like copying from WordPress a little bit. We've renamed article to post and basic page to page, so that there's some terminology that should be more familiar to people. To try to reduce what we call administrative pogo sticking. When you set up a content type, you need to go down and set up the content type, and then you have to leave the content type page and then you have to go over to the permissions page. And then you have to turn on all the permissions. And then you have to go over to the path auto settings and then set up the path auto settings. Like you end up with all this like go down, go up, go down, go up, go down, go up to try to navigate and set up all of your fields on one particular thing. To reduce that, we have just like the permissions on the content type page and path auto out of the box with default patterns that make sense. But you can also set up your path alias patterns directly from the page. Let's see, we also expanded the options that you can do. You can do things like you can turn off sticky and promoted on a per content type basis. Yeah, and turn off revisions.
Drupal 7, the only way to prevent anyone from creating revisions was to deny access, which was something that I found really frustrating. And so now you have the option to like turn on and off these individual settings per content type.
So just some additions that we're trying to simplify user interfaces, make them a little bit more user friendly. Let me look at my script here. Content architecture. Okay. Oh, sure. Yeah. I guess this shouldn't be too surprising, considering I did the CK editor in Drupal 8. But we spent a fair amount of time, just replicating all that functionality so that, it all exists within Backdrop as well. I can select images, upload, I can write a line, add captions. The same sort of thing that you see in Drupal 8 is also available here in the world of Backdrop. Yeah, this is, I don't know why this is like the picture that I have accessible, but yeah, a picture of me as a child in a plastic armor. I don't know. Yeah, as you do.
I can show the responsive vertical tab.
Oh yeah. So Drupal 8, as you know, has standardized on the 2-column layout now for administrative pages. Ironically, that has gone out of vogue, and now full width administrative pages are the most common because your content is full width now. So it's most common that your content is full width, so you want your editor to be full width to match. So we did some work making the vertical tabs properly responsive. So they collapse in the same way that everything else does, which is nice. So yay, everything mobile friendly, including vertical tabs and the tabs at the top of the page. So now I want to talk a little bit about the biggest divergent feature that is available in Backdrop that separates it functionality-wise from what you're familiar with in the world of Drupal, and that is layouts. So under structure, in Drupal 7 and in Drupal 8, we have blocks, and blocks can be placed in regions that are controlled by themes. And this means that your structure of your site, how your site is presented, is controlled by which theme you have enabled. And if you switch themes that have different region names, your blocks just blow up and they get thrown away, and a bunch of things all get dropped out. And so in the world of Backdrop, the blocks page has become literally a list of custom blocks where it's you can make a new block, but you can't actually position it. It's just a list of blocks now. And the reason why that is because the actual control of the page is now defined by layouts. And so layouts enable you to do lots of really great, amazing things. You can have as many different layouts as you have on your site. You can have, instead of themes having magic disappearing regions where it's if you don't put anything in it, then the region disappears. In the world of Backdrop, it'd be much more likely that you would just use a different layout. So these are the layouts that come out of the box in Backdrop Core. And if you want to, you can install and add new layouts just like you would a new module or a new theme. So we've created a new top-level concept called a layout. So if I were actually looking at my install here.
So there's 10 layouts out of the box. We took the most common ones from the Radix layouts theme, or Radix layouts project you might have seen in Drupal, and they are all using the Bootstrap 4 grid system, which uses Flexbox instead of floats. And we've been contributing a little bit to that project too to try and iron out some of the wrinkles.
Yeah, well, the template, yeah, you can see, yeah, it uses Bootstrap-based classes, call MD9, for example. But the way that it's defined is, we have .info files in the same way that themes have .info files in Drupal 7 and in Drupal 8. But the regions have just been moved out of the themes and into layouts. And so if you're doing a port, you can just take your theme, copy and paste your page template, essentially, into a layout template and move your regions in. There's some futzing that needs to be done, of course. But do you have a question?
Yeah. Just sort of approach on that. Do you still expect most themes to have sort of a hard-coded header and footer, or is there a whole page you have place everything in these layouts?
We've reworked the page a little bit. There's now a block called header.
Right.
So your layout has a region called header, and you can put your header block in there or not, and then your theme can override the template for that block if it needs to change the header. But the whole way the page is kind of been rethought. Have you heard of the Panels Everywhere module for Drupal? So Panels usually takes over the content area, which is just the middle of the page. Panel Everywhere takes over the entire contents of your page template. Layouts is more like Panels Everywhere, where it includes your entire page. You can delete the header and footer, and you get an unbranded page. You can drop whatever you want in there. So we have things like your page title, your breadcrumbs. Those are all blocks you just position in your layout. There's a little rethinking in your page template from Drupal 7 to remove those things.
So this entire, well, it's actually, well, you can see the little dotted outline that includes the title, the slogan, the logo, and the user menu is one block. So you can still control that one block.
You can do that.
Sure.
You can just see what it looks like. Like these used to be like theme settings, which is a little weird, but that should be a block setting. It should just be a block. So whether you want the logo site name slogan, you just configure the blocks or something or not.
Yeah, that's another good point, that all theme settings, the default theme settings that used to be in Drupal 7, and I guess they're in Drupal 8 as well, we don't have any default theme settings anymore because all theme settings are now accessible via the Layouts UI. So like whether or not you want the logo or site name or slogan or whatever, all themes support it because it just is in the default block configuration. And so if you don't want it on your site, you configure the block and turn it off, which of course makes it so that those settings work across different themes. So if you switch themes, all of your blocks stay in place and all the configuration of those blocks stay in place. Yeah, also cool. So this is the header block on the home page. We have these style settings so for every individual block, if you want to add a class to it, there's block class module, which I think is top 45 module. So block class module is in core. But we took a cue from views and made it so that if you want to customize the markup of the block, you can say, you know, I don't want to wrap around this, or this block is appropriate to be in the side tag. Classes on the wrapper, what heading level you want the wrapper or the header to be. Classes for the heading, content, the wrapper around the content itself, whether or not you want a wrapper there, and whether or not you want a class on that. You can customize that on a per block basis.
Per instance basis.
Yeah, per instance.
So you can put the same block in twice with different tags.
Is it fieldable too, or block fieldable?
No, so this is a significant difference between how Drupal 8 is handling blocks, where Drupal 8 took a block and made it content.
Yeah.
Backrubs took a block and made it configuration. So blocks are supposed to be administrative only tasks, the way they were intended to be in Drupal. And if you want content, you can use something more node-like to create block content, and then you can drop in individual nodes into a layout the same way you could drop blocks into a layout.
Okay.
Yeah, speaking of fieldable, you could say like you could drop an existing node in here if you wanted to. Although that makes it so that it's not exportable anymore because now you're mixing your content and your functionality. So it's a little bit of a there's pros and cons to that particular approach. Yeah, because even in Drupal 8, like fieldable configuration is not a thing. Like it's fieldable content still is the only thing that is truly fieldable. So this is fun. In the world of Backdrop, it's okay. This is out of the box. We have the default layouts, which affect every page on your site, except this is like anything that's administrative gets this layout, which is a single column, and the rest of the site gets a 2-column layout with the sidebar on the right-hand side, except for the home page. Backdrop solves like the age-old problem of Drupal problem of how do you make a landing page in Drupal? Just want to make a landing page. I don't know, like the yeah, custom menu callback, a view sometimes, or sometimes I've even seen people like make views that have no content or node that has no content, and then just like place a crap ton of blocks on that page, right? Like there's all kinds of hacks. Of course, the proper answer that everybody knows is use panels in the world of Drupal. Everybody knows that. But in the world of Backdrop, you can do that really easily. Like if you just want to make up some new, my new product page or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, whatever you want that landing page to be.
Like a 3-column line or 4-column line.
Yeah, sure. 3 columns, and I want this to, this is really where I wanted this to be.
We should fix that.
That should auto type the path. I'm not going to get into visibility conditions because we'll get to that in a second. So now I can say, this.
Wait. So what it did when he created a new layout is it copied all of the positioning from the default layout into the new one. So like your header and your footer will be placed automatically, and the only thing that's left are regions that didn't exist before. So like your 4 columns.
I think region. They went from a region that had column 17.
Every core layout has a header and a footer, but if you provided your own custom layouts that didn't, it wouldn't be able to copy stuff in. So it's like, I don't know where to get that from.
It wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
It wouldn't copy anything.
There is a contrib module called region copy or block copy that would let you place a block that's a copy of a region from another layout, but it's not going to be important.
Yeah, so I just want to make up a path, no problem. Make up a new path, fill it all up with blocks in any layout or organization you want, and yay, there you go. You've now made a custom layout with whatever content you want on it. Let's see. Oh, I also wanted to say that it's also common, maybe not common, but I've seen this happen a lot with people that marketing wants to have a page that's just like, I just want nothing. I just want it to be all custom everything. This is a great way to accomplish that you can just do things like remove the header and footer blocks entirely. And that, of course, will make the header and footer, like, there won't be anything in there, so it won't show up anything. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. And get rid of the breadcrumb. Yeah, we don't want any breadcrumb. We just want content. You know, and now I've got like a totally blank page with nothing on it. It's just the blocks. And of course, you can make your own layouts that match whatever needs you have for marketing related. But it wouldn't be surprising to me. Marketing tends to just just give me one column and just like throw some crap in there. Like, you know, now. Yeah, but making things really easy for people to do things however they like.
Is it actually stripping the markup, or is it just making them empty? Like,
it actually, I misspoke a little bit when I said there's no disappearing regions, because if a whole row is gone, it's up to how the layout decides to deal with that. Like, you know, we've got this if there's nothing in the top section, then don't print out the whole thing. But it's at your discretion on a per layout basis.
So on this one, like the middle row is going to be printed, right? Because there's no if statement, so it'll print that, but the top and the bottom disappear.
it's always been my biggest beef, so it's like way too verbose a lot of the time. It's like but I mean.
Well, so we know divitis is a Drupal problem. So now you at least have a UI where you can say remove the wrappers everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you want to write your own layouts that don't have any wrappers, you can do that too. So it's easier to get rid of the divs.
Yeah, I also want to.
But they're there by default.
I almost wish it was the other way though, where it's like
You could add them.
you add them. I mean, I know that's not necessarily practical for a lot of people, but like,
If you know what you're doing, that's better. But because we're catering towards people who just want it to work.
perfect sense.
Yeah.
You can also take any path within the entire system and override it, which includes, like, I'm going to take like posts, for example, and I'm going to give them a different layout where the sidebar is on the left-hand side. So I'm going to override the path node/%, and as I type in various paths like that are system paths, layouts will identify what context that is, like if it's a user path or a node path or whatever. And it makes it so that I can do things like I can pull fields out or contextual information related to that type of content and place them all individually as blocks.
This should make it so that as a user, you don't necessarily need to know what a context is, because Backrubs knows and it'll add that stuff for you. But if you have some crazy complicated use case and want to add 3 things in context, you can.
Yeah, so I'm going to say this path that is /post that lives at node/% should only apply if the node type is of post. So this won't affect pages, which will continue to fall back to the default layout. This will only affect posts. And so now I've got a left-hand sidebar. I can add that custom block. Oops, sorry. I can add that custom block. I'm just going to throw that in the left-hand sidebar. Oh, and when you override an existing path, you get this special block called main page content. And the main page content is what would normally be displayed at that page. In this case, the display of the node. I could also pull out things like if I wanted to display the image in the left-hand sidebar, I could pull out that image specifically. And this has got all the formatter capabilities, like you can choose, what size you want the image to be and whether or not you want it linked and all of those things. And I'm going to go to a piece of content. Here we go, like this guy. I don't have an image actually uploaded into the field, into the image field, so there's nothing in the left-hand sidebar. But that, oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, this guy. This is going to be a little bit weird because I have the image twice. Because the main page content is already displaying the image, and I pulled out and displayed the image as a block as well. But allows per page display or per path configuration of all of the blocks on that particular path. Very, very useful and powerful.
So it's kind of like nodes, but easier to use, and I'm sorry, it's kind of like panels, but easier to use and centralized control over all the different layout options, and it's core.
Yeah, yeah, and there's no fighting between like blocks versus context versus versus panels. It's all just, this is the way, and everybody just does it this way. So yeah, very major win for consistency.
It is just a port of Drupal 7 panels module. So if you're familiar with the panels API, it's very similar, which is completely new user interface on it because the interface was what scared a lot of people away from panels in Drupal.
It was awful.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
powerful.
Oh gosh, there's so many more things that we haven't mentioned. To help speed up things, you can also install modules directly through the user interface. This is Project Browser. So this pulls from backdropcms.org. I can just say, I want Google Analytics, and then it can like download and install directly from the user interface. Security concerns, blah, blah, blah. Well, Drupal 7 and Drupal 8, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, already has the ability to install modules, but the only interface it gives you is install from a URL. Like, that's a good idea. Let's encourage our end users to copy and paste URLs and install from URLs. Like, we basically have shunted that user interface into this tiny, like, obscure location because we don't want people to really use it, and have instead featured it all as a browser.
And these are only modules that have official releases on backrubs.cms.org. So if you ported a module, dropped it in the contrib repo, but it doesn't have a release yet, like it's a dev version, it's not ready, you can't get to it from here. That is a developer tool. This is an end user tool. You say, okay, I'm going to create a release of this module, you tag it, it shows up on backrubs.cms.org, and it will start showing up in the UI. So this is like a user-safe way to install modules.
Yeah, and we're almost out of time. So I want to touch on configuration management because we have that. It's probably the main reason, like if you're a developer working in the world of Drupal 7 and managing features all the time, you're probably sinking somewhere between a quarter and a third of your time into managing those stupid features. So the ease of upgrading a Drupal 7 site to Backdrop, plus the advantages of things like layouts and configuration management, should make it so you're getting a return on that investment in a very short amount of time. That's our objective. So I've started up a new, oh gosh, I should have installed or finished this, but I spun up a new Backdrop site from backdropcms.org. There's a big button on the homepage that just says spin up on Pantheon. And so it'll spin up on Pantheon and then give you the installer interface. So we're going to install Backdrop real quick here on a brand new installation of Pantheon.
So this is real quick. It installs faster than Drupal 7.
Let's throw it.
Yeah, we came through Throbber a little differently.
Okay. All right, so now you get to see a truly fresh install of Backdrop. This is brand new out of the box with nothing happening on it whatsoever. And as I said, you know, there's two pieces of content, the about page and the your first post. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on my local host, go over here to, configuration management. I'm going to do a full export of my site. I also want to point out the fact that in the world of Backdrop, we vary from Drupal 7 a bit in that all of our configuration, all of our configuration is all just JSON files. And so as you're configuring stuff, you're actually writing configuration files to JSON. So it's similar to Drupal 8. Drupal 8 stores stuff in the database and has YAML exports. Ours are just in the files directory already, so there's not really any export step because it's already all exported all the time.
But if you want a nice clean tarball, we have user interface to start them up for you.
Yeah, and so now I'm going to go over here to my Pantheon site and then do a full import. Stage the import. And then this will, very similar to Drupal 8, show you all the things that you've done, such as I have modified the homepage slightly. You know, I changed the style on that block from default to dynamic. I changed the wrappers. The site name is different, which isn't surprising. I modified the content type. But yeah, then I hit import. And so this is on the Pantheon site. And now upon doing this, this will copy over everything that I've done. Content-wise, of course, things are really similar, but that block was exported as config, that custom block that I created, and this, in fact, this page is a 2-column layout, and all of those layouts that we configured all, moved entirely in between environments, just like that. So no more features.
It's also super easy to manage your config files in Git. That's usually what we do for most of our Backrub properties, where you have 2 directories, one active and one staging, and you kind of cross-link them so that on your local site you can just commit the active directory, and then on your live site you pull, and it pulls from the active directory on config into the staging directory on live, and then you can sync. And it makes deploying so easy because you're like, deploy all of my code and my config at the same time. And then you just import and it'll run through the configuration and then your site's updated. So it's so much easier than features. I have to say, it's my favorite thing about working at Backrub.
Well, we've overrun our time by a couple of minutes, I'm afraid. So we don't have time for questions.
Wait, it's only 1:53.
Oh, this ends at 1:50, right?
It's okay, I don't start until 2, so if you wait until like 1:58.
Anyway, we're out of time, so I don't think that we can do questions, but you can catch us. We'll be around the rest of the day,
We have
of course.
stickers if you like dragons. Our mascot's a dragon. We've got dragon stickers there for free. If you love dragons, we also have t-shirts and hoodies for sale. If you make a donation to the Backrub Foundation, we give you a thank you gift. And we have 2 books if you're interested in reading about upgrading from Drupal to Backrub. There's a book on that, and there's a beginning Backrub book too. You're welcome to browse them here, but you can buy them on Amazon. So,
All right.
that's that.
Well, thank you guys all very much for coming.